He didn't originally settle here in Newburgh. He actually passed down to New Orleans. And on his way down to New Orleans, when he got down there, he found out that reeds, that the reeds for weaving, were a hot commodity, so to speak, and worth a lot of money. And he had seen cornbread on the way down there that to make the reeds. So he decided to come back to this area and go into the business making reeds. He decided to come over here because his wife liked this area. He bought this property out here and decided to build his house. Now he had no formal training, but he knew he could do it. So what he did, he put 4 posts into the ground to make it as big as he wanted. So, and then he bricked all the way up. And the bricks are about 12 inches thick, which kept the house very warm. The wrought iron up here was something that he had seen down in New Orleans, which he liked. So he has one in front, which is 90 inches long, and 1 feet long, and 1 in back, the same. He had stables. He had a house for his servants in back, and it was just a grand place. Now what I'm going to tell you about is about a gentleman who used to live here when he was a young boy. He was to take care of this house when the owners were gone. But you know how boys are. They don't always do what they're told to do. And this one day, he decided to play with his friends instead of come over here and take care of the house. So when he got over here, it was really, really late, and it was dark. So when he opened the door and went inside, he heard a commotion upstairs. So he kind of went up the stairs very quietly. He looked around, didn't see anything, and looked out on the porch out and back. Didn't see anything there. So he thought, oh, shoot, I guess I was just dreaming. So he starts back down the steps. And as he's going down the steps, he takes something rush across the street. And what do you think he did? He took off. And the next time he came over here, it was during the day. Now years have gone by, and he's a grown man, and he has a daughter. She came to this Terry house for a birthday party. They took a picture. When the picture came back, there was a strange little girl in that picture. And even today, they don't know who that little girl is, and nobody knew her. So tonight, if a strange girl shows up there, tell me, so I can send her back so she can get a kiss. Okay?
I hadn't heard that one before.
You hadn't? I remembered that one. It's probably just a cobweb brushed up against his face.
Well, they don't know.
I'm so cynical about this stuff, but then I love it at the same time.
Yeah. He felt something when he came down the stairs, brushed by him. And
she was born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1852. Shortly after her birth, her father passed away. Her mother remarried a man by the name of Mr. McKay. Now this is during their consecration of Mr. McKay and Mrs. McKay ordered a crater with their 2 children, Mamie and little Jessie. Now, as they're coming down, Mr. McKay gets very sick. So when they got to the driving port of Newburgh, they had to get off so he could be taken care of. He got well, and while he was here, he helped build some of the houses here. One of which was the second house, which is down there.
You hardly hear her.
He then passed the wall and passed away, leaving this where you had agencies to take care of children. So they were given to different families. And little Chester was going to go up there and live. Was adopted by
Playing that song.
well, as she grew up, she decided she wanted to be adopted. And her family didn't want her to be adopted. They wanted her to go to the music conservatory in Cincinnati. But she said no. She stayed here and taught piano. Well, she saved all her money, and when she had enough, she announced to her parents, I'm going to school in Chicago. And left. She was almost 30 at that point. Well, as you know, back in those days, women would look upon that as well as today, so to speak. So it was very hard for her to find a job. She did find one, and it was in Colorado, at a prison. She went out there, and she was there for 8 years. Well, the interesting thing is while she was there, she used to take care of the prisoners who had been released and moved after their succession. They would get hold of her, and put her on the train. She'd go out and sleep inside, and they'd stop the train. She'd get off. She'd attend to them, fix them up. They'd put her back on the train, and she'd go back to the prison. She always said that they treated her very well and treated her very, very well. So after 8 years, she retired and went a year about a year. She came back there and practiced. Well, then started to explore music. He spent almost all of his life wandering around the countryside looking for his sister, calling out, Minnie, Minnie, where are you? And never ever found her. Didn't realize that she was now married herself.
Can't hardly hear her. Or they need to start miking them or something. At least you don't pay a lot of money for this tour.
Well, this is the home of Camille McCormick. He was our violin maker. We are quite fortunate to have one of his violins. There is his violin in the museum, and you can see it anytime on a Friday or Saturday. We're always open 11 to 3. Now, he was also a dry goods merchant. And they could always say that you could always smell the wood and the glue coming from his house. Now, back in 1960, the house changed hands, and the Pritchard family bought the house. So Mr. and Mrs. Pritchard moved in, and they brought Mother Pritchard with them. And that can be scary in itself. So they took care of them. In 1960, they decided to leave and go to another city and another job. Well, they left Mrs. Mother Pritchard behind in the house, and she was to see the closing of the sale of the house. Now, she was a quiet person, and the neighbors would see her out every once in a while, but not very often. But several days had gone by, and they had to see her, so they got quite concerned. So several of the neighbors came over here, and they went up to the door. But the door was not open. So as they opened the door and they looked in, lo and behold, there was Mother Pritchard hanging from the stairs. Now we don't really know what happened or why she happened. But we do know what happens in this house is quite strange. You'll be sitting on the couch and all of a sudden pictures will fall off the wall for no reason at all. People who have had pets in this house say, there is some room, let's just go to the door, look in, and then turn around and walk away. The won't go in. And you can actually feel the cold breeze across the back of your neck. And on a really quiet night, you can hear steps going up the staircase. And you know, on a night like this, when it's nice and quiet and cool, and I have to walk past here, I don't. I go across the street to over there, and I walk up that way. And that's exactly what we're going to do tonight.
Was Stokes' garwood. They called him Stokes because he stoked the fire. In 1840, my pa and his brother came from Ohio to build a blacksmith shop on Gray Street over there. Do you know what a blacksmith does? Tell me something. Exactly. Now, most young men will tell me they make swords. But, yes, he makes horseshoes and wagon wheels and parts for the riverboat. Well, that's how we got around in 1840. So you might say that my pa was one of the most important people in Newburgh in 1840. As a result, we were sort of well-to-do. In 1840, Mom and Pa built this fine house upon the hill. This house had 10 rooms in 1840. That was a lot of rooms for a house back then, but I had 10 brothers and sisters, so we filled it up pretty well. I don't know if you can still see, but you can also look back this way. We hired a stone cutter. A stone cutter takes a big rock and uses a chisel, a metal. Oh, yes, thank you. If you just step back, you can see. See how rough that second stone is and how smooth some of these over here are? Well, we hired a stone cutter called Mr. Butterworth who would carve stones with a big metal stick called a chisel and a hammer, and he did it by hand. Took him days and days to make one brick. Well, he had made most of the bricks that are in this wall, and today still a few of Mr. Butterworth's bricks are holding up this wall. That was almost 200 years ago. Mr. Butterworth was quite the craftsman. Now, before the Civil War, I was a young girl, and two of my favorite things were to play with my paper dolls and read books. This is a replica of a pre-Civil War paper doll. Now, you may say, oh, no way they look that good. Well, before the Civil War, greeting cards were made in London, England. They were drawn by hand, they were colored by hand, and to keep their fine color, they would be covered in a lacquered finish. And they would shine just like Elsie Dinsmore here. Then you'd also get a sheet of little dresses. And little girls who were going to make dresses, big dresses, when they grew up, would practice their cutting skills. No punching for us. And you know what? If you didn't cut very closely, very carefully, Elsie Dinsmore might lose a finger. Well, Elsie Dinsmore was Poirot's second favorite thing for young girls before the Civil War, and that was reading books. We used to like a particular kind of book called a serial book. It was a book where one chapter came about every 3 months. And Elsie Dinsmore, who was an orphan who went to live with her aunt in the South, was one of our favorite characters. We couldn't wait for someone to go to the post to get the next chapter to see what Elsie Dinsmore was up to this month. Well, then came the Great Civil War. Well, I don't know why they called it so great. I was a young girl by then, and I had a beau. His name was Robert Taylor, brother to Dr. Taylor down the way. Robert and I were swearing our undying love for one another and promised that after the war we would marry. Well, alas, Robert did not return from the war. But I never found out what happened to him, so I would always think that he was only wounded somewhere, and someday he would come for me. So the rest of my days I would wear black and wait for news of Robert. Therefore, after the Civil War, Mom, Pa, and I were the only ones living in this big house, and as a result, it was my responsibility to prepare many of the meals. Well, I prepared lunch one day, and Pa, I called him, Pa, Pa. Well, my Pa was a big man, he didn't miss any meals, so I ran to the barn, and there I found Pa, hanging from the rafters. Well, we don't know how Pa got there. We don't know if his chain accidentally broke or if someone wanted him gone. But he used to be master of this men's club down by the river. They call themselves the Masons. But they were so horrified that he might have taken his own life that they said he accidentally shot himself while cleaning his gun. But that's not what happened. Pa was hanging. Well, I would live in this house until the early 1900s. There was a little girl who lived across the street. She was about 6. When she grew up, she wrote a book called Rivertown Tales. You can find it in the Newburgh Library today. One of the chapters is of the lady who wore black. That was me. She said one of her favorite pastimes was to wait till Miss Fanny would go to the post to hear news of her beau. She would walk with her, and if the little girl were very, very good, then Miss Fanny would ask her in to play with her paper dolls in the cupboard. Well, time passed, and so did I, and other folks would come to live in my fine house. And they tell a tale that I know must be true because it was printed in that big city Evansville newspaper called the Courier. Why, they say that the folks who lived in this house in 1960 heard footsteps upstairs in the hallway. And when they peeked out, they saw a big man with a long black beard. Well, I think that might have been my pa. But you know what the very, very worst thing was? They said my pa used their bathroom. And he didn't flush. Do you know what an outhouse is? Oh good, I didn't have to tell you. My pa used one, he probably didn't know how to flush. Oh look, Robert's returning for me on his horse. Can you boys see Robert? Can you see Robert? Here, come on over here, look. Robert, he's coming. He's on his horse. Come on up here. You gotta look up by the house. Yep, by the house.
He's got red eyes.
Got red eyes? Oh, he's just dead. Okay, there's Annie down there. She has got a lot of people running in and out of her house today. And I know she's got a story to tell. You need to run down and find what's going on. I'm dying to know. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I like her too.
Good, thank you. I seen y'all over next door talking to Miss Fanny Garwood. I imagine she was telling y'all about my Miss Polly, but between you and me, Miss Fanny ain't been the same ever since she found her paw hanging in the barn. You know what I mean? Well, it's a real sad time for us here. Tomorrow we're going to be burying Miss Polly Castle's 8th husband. Now this is Mr. Samuel Weed's house. Mr. Weed. He was Miss Polly's 5th husband. He'd had such a sad, sad life. He'd had 2 beautiful young wives and 5 little children, and they all died young. And after that, Mr. Weed decided he'd stay up here in this big old house all by himself the rest of his life and never get married again. But that was before he met my Miss Polly. Now, she charmed him, but she gave him the happiest years of his life. Them last few years he was on this earth, that was the happiest that man had. And when he died, he didn't have no other earthly relation. So we got his house and all his worldly possessions. Well, right after Mr. Samuel Weed died, Mr. George Boyden came back to town. Mr. George, he was a traveling salesman from New York. He'd been Miss Polly's 4th husband. I think he must have heard about Mr. Weed's passing, because he didn't waste no time coming right up to the house to pay a call on the grieving widow the day he came back to town. That afternoon, he talked, and he talked, and he talked some more. And before he left, he proposed again, and she'd accepted again. And they up and got married. And Mr. George Boyden moved into right into Mr. Samuel Weed's house. Well, things was fine for a while, I must admit, till 3 days after Christmas, 1900. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was upstairs making the beds, and I heard her call to me, Miss Annie, come downstairs. Something terrible's happened. And I ran downstairs, and there he was, George Boyden, drowned dead in the cistern, with flat irons tied to his feet. We don't have no idea how anything like that could have happened. But if you folks from around here, you might remember reading about this in the newspaper. The police came to investigate. Miss Polly made one statement. She said, "What a shame to have spoiled all that good water." Well, that was a long time ago. It's 1910 today. All these houses around here, they all been modernized. They all have what you call running water. You turn the faucet on and water comes right out. Miss Polly, she won't hear no modernization of her house. No, sir. We are still using that cistern water. And between you and me, I don't like the idea of drinking water George Boyden floated in. Well, there's a lot to do before the funeral tomorrow. because there's one thing for sure. Miss Polly likes things nice and tidy when she marries them. And when she marries them. Excuse me, sir, are you attached to a wife or a girlfriend? Maybe. Well, I've got a deal for you. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we're going to stop by for some tea because the funeral will be over and Miss Polly will be looking for another husband. Oh, I think she's looking down here right now. I've got to get back to work evening, folks.
Well, this is the home of Louis. It was actually built in 1846. He bought it later than that. And he added the porch up here, which was really nice during the summer because you could sit out there and listen to the music coming from the South House, or the violin music. Or they would sit on the rock here and listen. Now, he was the owner of the brewery, Eagle Brewery. We actually had a brewery right here in Newburgh. And it was in operation until about 1881 when it was converted into a flour mill. And that was, it lasted until about 1960 when it ceased operation and the apartments were built down there at Locust and Gray Street. Now, Mr. Pat Miller was described as a very active man in his church and in the community. And there was an article because a lady sued him for breach of promise. You know what that is? You don't. Well, he asked her to marry him, and he said no, didn't marry her, broke his promise. So now, 5 generations of the Orr and Mum family lived in this house. And that's where we get our story. Because when they lived here, they encountered, well, you could call him a friendly ghost, but a mischievous ghost. He used to steal everybody's glasses, or he would hide them, or, well, we just didn't know what he did with them. Now, we were up at Rose Hill Cemetery one day looking at the gravestones and came upon his grave. Well, his grave is marked like a stump of a tree, and on top of that is a book. So now we know why he takes those classes, so that he can read that book. So, for you and you or anybody having classes, enter right here, and as we walk by, you won't lose your glasses. That is the Untitled Presbyterian Church. It was built in 1861. It only cost at that time a mere $4,000. Can you imagine? It's brick all the way to the top, and it's kind of built about a roll up the top with the 4 directions coming out of the street. Now, it was told that during the Lincoln and Douglas debates, that their heads were cut off and hung from up there by the Democrats. So they said in the book. Don't know. But it was actually in print May 2nd, 1935. Now during the Civil War, they tied a rope from the bell tower down to the Phelps House. And the reason why they did that was so that they could warn the town guards if the Confederates came across the river and attacked them, that they could call up the guards, because the Confederates were right across the river in Kentucky. Now, how many of you know that Newburgh was the first town north of the Mason-Dixon line that was captured without a shot being fired?
I knew that.
You know that story? Have you heard it? Yeah.
The kids have
Well, guess what? We may encounter a soldier who will tell us all about it later on our trip. So we have to go on down that way, unless he's through, so we can go hear him, all right?
Alright, can everybody hear me? Alright. So does everybody know what this is? Coffin? Okay, but did you guys know back in the early 1900s, these were actually called burial cabinets. And they were actually not called coffins. So the story that I'm going to be telling you is regarding the business that was here in this building. The business owner and his son created a very prominent furniture cabinet business here, and actually they provided the furniture and cabinets for many businesses as well as homes in this area. Well, with all of the deaths that were happening in the early 1900s, such as the story you just heard of all her husbands dying, he decided that it would be a good idea to start making burial cabinets. So he created this business upstairs, and as you know, the only way to get upstairs and down the stairs was through stairs. There wasn't elevators, there wasn't conveyor belts. So he got into a lot of heated arguments with a grocery store that used to be on the corner, because the grocery store owner stated that while his patrons were in there shopping, trying to pick out vegetables, all they would hear up and down the steps all day and all night. And then a lot of the residents here also got very upset because their loved ones had to be fitted for these. Of course, when you're making a cabinet, you have to be fitted. So their loved ones would be thumping up and down the steps. So it's been told that on an overcast night when ghosts are out, that you can actually hear thumping up and down in this area. And they say not to be scared, because you've heard the story now, that it's actually a burial cabinet going up and down. Another interesting fact about this, he actually, with his cabinets, he actually helped create Rose Hill Cemetery with his burial cabinet. So a lot of our ancestors or whatever that lived in this area were probably in a Hofershorn burial cabinet. So as you guys are walking with your guide, just be careful of all the cracks and stuff in the sidewalks. Also be careful of the traffic. You know, I do have a measuring tape just in case if I have to fit one of you guys without listening interference for one of these wonderful burial cabinets. So if you guys would follow your guide to the next stop. Thank you for listening, guys.
It didn't have the turret on it, and it was 3 stories. And eventually, the west wing was added to the back. Not to be confused with the west wing at Sawattica. They used to say that there was a veranda that the men would sit on, just like the women on. And why? It's because in those days, very thin showed your ankles. So when the men crossed this road here, which was dirt, and if it rained, it was muddy, they would have to lift their skirts and show their ankles. So they would sit up there and
Guess we don't go over there and hear about that anymore. That's Water
now we're going
Street
to be going
thing.
up the hill here. So just follow me. That's a tree.
Me too.
How you all doing tonight?
Good.
None of you people from Paris, France, are you?
Nope.
The reason why I asked, the story I'm about to tell you, after it's all said and done, the story that happened here in Newburgh, they telegraph wired it all over the world, even to the newspapers in Paris, France. It's a story about how the town of Newburgh became the first town north of the Mason-Dixon line to be captured by the Confederate States of America. And we didn't fire a single shot. That's right. Now you might ask yourself, well, how did we capture a Union stronghold like Newburgh was at the time and not fire a single shot? But let me tell you something. Us Southern boys, we ain't just tougher than any Yankee you ever seen. But we smarter, too. We outsmarted them. I know I was there. I'm a proud member of Captain Adam Rankin Johnson's guerrilla fighting regiment, Confederate States of America. I reckon I know the story about as good as anybody. You see, it was July 1862, summertime, hot. Now my regiment, we was down there in Kentucky, you see, and we was doing guerrilla warfare against the Yankees. And we was doing pretty good, too. Well, we was doing pretty good until we kind of ran into some trouble. You see, we started running out of important supplies. Things like ammunition, medical supplies, food. It's a bad situation all the way around, I can tell you that right now. But anyway, we had heard that up here in Newburgh, it being a thriving town, that they had supplies. You see, the town was charged with at the time by a man named Colonel Union Bethel. Now, old Bethel had him a warehouse down there on Water Street, and they stored ammunitions in there. That Newburgh Hotel there in middle town, they turned that into a Union hospital for Union troops. So they had medical supplies in there. And we needed all that stuff. Problem was, we didn't know exactly how we was going to get it. You see, there was only 27 of us in our whole regiment. Turns out, 27 is all we really needed. Captain come up with a brilliant idea, he did. Comes up to me and says, here's what I want you to do. Says, I want you to get you some charred wood, some wagon wheels, some old stovepipe. I want you to put it together and make it look like a couple of cannons. I said, sir, yes, sir. That's exactly what I did. Got some charred wood, some wagon wheels, some old stovepipe. I tied it up, put it together, and made it look like a couple of cannons. Made it look pretty good, too. Now, the morning of July 18th, again, 1862, Captain comes up to me and says, you make them cannons like I asked? I said, sir, yes, sir. He says, well, here's what I want you to do. He says, I want you to put them on the Kentucky side of the Ohio River. I want you to point them toward the town of Newburgh. And more specifically, you point them towards Bethel's warehouse full of ammunition. That's exactly what I did. Here's the plan. Well, he's going to come across the Ohio River, surprise him at 12 o'clock noon. You see, we figured the Yankees would be up here in their fancy Yankee clothes, eating their fancy Yankee lunches at 12 o'clock noon. And that's exactly what we did. Come across the ferry at 12 o'clock noon, wasn't nary a soul walking around in town. Because you see, they was all inside eating a fancy lunch on a hot summer day. First thing we did, we went down to Bethel's warehouse full of ammunition. We loaded up our rifles. Then we marched up the street, went into that Union hospital. Now let me tell you something. They had stationed battle-ready Union troops in there. But we busted in anyway, and we tell them, we're taking the town. They didn't like that very much. Matter of fact, they didn't like it so much that they picked up their rifles, you see, and they pointed them right at us like they was going to shoot us. Scared me half to death. Captain, he said, He said, we got you surrounded. He said, matter of fact, go get your Colonel Bethel. I got something to show you. Went and got Bethel. Bethel come up. Captain says, we got you surrounded, Bethel. As a matter of fact, look across the river over there, over the house. We got 2 cannons pointing right at the town. And more specifically, at your warehouse full of ammunition. You fight back the wee little bit. We'll give them the signal, and they'll blow the town to smithereens. Guess what? He fell for it right then and there. He was in town and everything. He was in charge of all of it. Now, some people say that old Bethel was concerned about the welfare of the town. That's why he gave up. But I come here to tell from a good friend of mine that Bethel's what you might call tight with his money. He didn't want to lose that warehouse building, no siree. Matter of fact, my friend tell me Bethel's so tight that when he holds the buffalo nickel, he squeezes it so hard that if you lean down real close, you hear the buffalo cry for help. I thought that was a funny joke too. Anyway, we were in charge of the town. We went into the hospital, got all the medical supplies we could get. Went back down to the warehouse, got all the ammunition we could take. Matter of fact, there's a couple good old boys that live here in town. Their names are Mr. Nefford and Mr. Carney. Captain, me call them Southern sympathizers. We call them good old boys. You know why? They help us out. They showed us around town. Showed us where the stables were. We got some horses from there. And then they showed us where all the rich people here in Newburgh live. When you come to know it, rich people here in Newburgh were more than happy to make donations to the Confederate cause. Got some nice donations out of this house, right, Chick? Actually, we stole their stuff, okay? Don't tell nobody. Anyway, we was in charge of the town for 5 hours,
flash on.
collecting all we could collect.
Oh,
Now you might say, why
don't
only
know how to
5
turn it
hours?
off.
Why didn't you stay longer? Well, there's a city not too far from here you may have heard of. It's called Evansville. They had a whole Union battalion stationed there, hundreds of troops. We knew once the word leaked out, we'd take the town of Newburgh, they'd send them boys over here, outnumber us, whoop them. There went no part of that, no siree. So after collecting all we could collect for 5 hours, we licked on out of here. All 27. All the good guys got away scot-free. Actually, that's not entirely correct. Oh, all 27 of my regiment, we got away scot-free, that's for sure. But you remember me telling you about them two good boys, Mefford and Carney?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I figured they'd lick on out of here like we did. Maybe they might join up with us. But you know what? They didn't do either one. They kind of hung around town, so to speak. And after we left, the town of Newburgh figured out that we had tricked them with fake cannons. It was very unhappy. Matter of fact, they're so unhappy that they kind of gathered themselves together in something that you might call an angry mob. That mob was so angry. They were so mad about what we had done to the town that they went and grabbed them two good boys, Mefford and Carter. They grabbed them, shot them dead, and hung their dead bodies underneath the Union Hospital and put a sign on their chest that said, "This is what happens to Southern sympathizers around here." A moment of silence, please. Anyway, that's the story about how the town of Newburgh became the first town north of the Mason-Dixon line to be captured by the Confederate States of America. We didn't fire a single shot. Furthermore, Captain Adam Rankin Johnson, the man who come up with a brilliant idea, he was forevermore known as Captain Adam Stovepipe Johnson.
Cool.
Hope you like the stove. Have a good night now.
Yay! That was so good. He's so good at this.
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Raven, but the lady that used to own this house was a famous costumer in Hollywood, and she worked on the movies like Lincoln and Titanic. And I heard that she also worked on Raven, and these birds actually came from that suit. So, but that lady, I think she's since passed now, her sister. So that was pretty fascinating. I didn't know that. But good evening. In 1911, my daughter Bonnie Walden died at Cypress Beach. And Cypress is located where the new Lincoln Dam is now. Back then, that was the happening place to be. We had boats for hire, we had a dance pavilion, we had tables and benches, and we even had a ferry that crossed the Ohio. Well, we were invited to a chicken roast, the swimming party, and Bonnie and her girlfriend had gotten new swimsuits and wanted to try them out. Well, I was a little reluctant with it being in the river, but Bonnie was a strong swimmer, so I thought it should be okay. They went and they were having fun, and then Bonnie's friend ran into trouble. So Bonnie swam out, brought her back where she could touch the bottoms, and before Bonnie knew it, she was taken in by a strong current. And so we searched for her, and we found her about a mile downstream. As you can imagine, we were devastated that we lost our Bonnie. Not only were we devastated, she had a pet parrot that also breathed. And that poor bird did the same thing over and over, which was the only thing it was ever taught, was the word Bonnie. Constantly would say, "Bonnie, Bonnie, where's my Bonnie?" So after hearing that so many times and just watching this poor bird grieve, we just decided to move it out here on the porch. And that's where the poor bird stayed until it passed away. And it's been said that at night when it's cool, you can hear a bird say, "Bonnie." After that, we warned all the children, if you go swimming in the Ohio River, please remember Bonnie Walden. That's my story. Wow. Mine's a little bit shorter than most of them. Thank you guys so much.
That's sad. Thank
You guys have a good evening.
Okay, we're going to head on down to the bank, which is down on the corner.
Very sad story to share tonight. Gather around so you can hear. Well, you know
that the town of Newburgh during 1850, 60, all the way up to the 1870s was a flourishing river town with steamer ships coming up and down from Pittsburgh all the way to New Orleans. Now, when about 1880 came, unfortunately the railroads passed us by. And you know what? So did progress. That's why all these big old buildings are still here, because progress passed us by. But it was okay because the town of Newburgh did all right. It was a quiet little town, but we made it just fine until 1929 and the stock market crashed. Do you all know what the stock market means? You know what happened when the stock market crashed? Well, you know what? This building was the Farmers Bank, and it went bankrupt. That means people couldn't get their money out of the bank. That means that businesses were failing. People couldn't get a job. Oh my gosh, they couldn't feed their kids. They couldn't feed their babies. It was a terrible time here and all around the United States. Well, the Farmers Bank had 3 directors. 2 of those directors hung themselves. They just couldn't live with what was happening to their family and friends around them. It was terrible. Well, there was a 3rd director, and it's even a sadder story. Well, he was a very gentle man, a very kind man. He had been taking care of his invalid mother for years. And he met just a nice lady at the prayer meeting, and she was helping him out for a long time, like years long time. And all of a sudden, he up and decided to marry her. Well, she was starting to get up in years too, and you know, gosh, to marry a director of a bank, I mean, that was a pretty cool thing. So she was excited. She got herself one of those fine white dresses and lace on it. And they went off to Henderson, Kentucky and got married. They sure did. And that same night they came home. They went up here in the bank building and they were sitting in the living room, and he excused himself and went off into the bedroom. This was their wedding night. My gosh, he went off by himself and he was gone for a long time. When she finally went to the bedroom, and there on the floor, her husband was dead. He had slit his throat. He was laying in a pool of blood. Oh, it was just a terrible, terrible thing. Can you imagine? I'm told that blood stain was there for years. So she was a bride and a widow in the same day. Oh my goodness, what a terrible thing to happen to somebody. Well, personally, I think that her husband planned it so that he had somebody to take care of his mom, don't you think? Anyway, that's my sad story. And you know, across the street there's the Exchange Hotel. I'm telling you, there's some secrets to be told there. Well, you just enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
So we're going to go back up to the cross.
This is the one they say that you can still see like the light on up there or something, right?
Closing down? Well, just the business, but the actual building's not going to go anywhere. It's been around for a while. So I'd like to tell you a little story about the building if you all don't mind. Would you like to hear?
Yes.
Yeah? Thank you. Okay, so let's see. It was back when my friend Joseph Spitz, like spit out your gum, Spitz, he bought this hotel exchange, or he bought the building to use as a hotel exchange in 1841. And so it was built with a very strong structure. The architect made the walls 27 inches thick, so it's very, very, very sturdy. Mr. Spitz kept this hotel exchange for 9 years until he went and opened up another hotel by the riverfront. And I said, that's fine, Mr. Spitz, you just have no money. So then my other friend, Mr. Zayden Hazen, he was from Vermont. He wanted to open up a hotel exchange. So he came here, purchased the building, and opened his business. And I said, Mr. Zayden Hazen from Vermont, it's getting very busy. Lots of travelers are coming through and lots of salesmen. So, you know, we really need to take into account how crowded it is in here. So he built the 3rd story in the west wing. I won't take credit for it, but you know, he is a good friend and I did tell him to do that. So, let's see. There were a couple more gentlemen who kept this a hotel exchange in 56. And then later, after the Roaring 20s, 1927, a few more of my friends came to purchase the building. Mr. Lewis and Adele Chevillon. They opened up the Chevillon department store. So it kind of evolved into more of a department store, even a furniture store. Obviously, with all that wide space back there to hold our, painting couches and lounge chairs. Right now, obviously, we all see the antique mall. It's leased out by the present owner. And the present owner had a very interesting story. He had to go fix the pipe work. The pipes are very, very old in this building. So he goes downstairs and he sees this, very large, very dark tunnel. So I'm in the basement and I say, Mr. Present Day Owner who leases this space, don't you dare go in that tunnel. And so he goes in the tunnel, and then he just leads around through the tunnel where it ends up being this large pit. So it's 20 by 20 by 18 feet. Have you ever swam in a pool that was 18 feet deep? It's very, very deep. And it was a very strong structure with these limestone walls. And within these walls, there are actually these marks that look like fingernail, like coming through the stone, like claw marks. And so obviously, it was very evident that it was a very strong area, very sturdy, so something had to be down there. And with those fingernails, maybe someone had to be down there. We've had visitors from the States and from universities come visit this pit, if you will, and there's still no exact reason documented of why it exists. Some of the theories I'd be happy to explain. One of them would be for ice holding. Back in my day, we could cross the river. It was very, very shallow and go right over to Kentucky. So what a lot of my friends did, they would cut the ice, they would bring it back over into a very sturdy, cool place to store the ice for the summertime. Another reason that this could have existed would be because of the Civil War. We lost a lot of soldiers in that. It is very sad, sir. Try to compose yourself, okay? So we did lose a lot of soldiers in battle, and so it very well may have been because, or I'm so sorry, it very well may have been a place to hold those soldiers before they can get back to home, to their families, to be properly buried. It doesn't explain those fingernail marks, though, unless maybe some of those Gulf soldiers weren't ready to stop fighting. So what's said to be believed with that is this could have been an area to hold the slaves. Now once again, my friends didn't open up this building until 1841. Does anyone know when slavery stopped in Indiana? Guesses?
Indiana was slave free.
I'm sorry?
Indiana was not a slave state.
It was emancipated in 1830, in fact, this area. But Kentucky was still a slave state while this building was open. So it was very possible that the slaves were, they got us. Oh, those horses. So it's very possible that those slaves were held downstairs, underground, as a secret. And so they would be sold over to Kentucky that was still a slave state. So there's lots of mystery about this pit. I really appreciate you hearing my story. I'll let you believe what you wish about what it may have existed for. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Hi, Daddy. So, our guide's voice was pretty wore out, so I'm sorry if you can't hear her sometimes. And also, they keep letting them cars go through and making all that noise, so that might interrupt a bunch of it. Two things? The house where the soldier was in front of, she said there was a lady who was on a wagon.
Yeah, she come over on a wagon train.
On a wagon train, and she got scalped by Indians and lived, and she lived out her life in that house. And then in the hotel, the big building I like a lot, the last one, there's a ghost named Marshall at the top the lady talked about. I think that was all of it. They really